Listen, this is the only official 12 tribes breakdown. You can't get this anywhere else because this is Isupk, home of the truth. Listen, this is the only official 12 tribes breakdown. You can't get this anywhere else because this is Isupk, home of the truth.
Over the centuries, scattered reports told of Jewish tribes living beyond the mythical Sambatyon River, of a remote African land inhabited by the 10 lost tribes of Israel.
Now, here's what happened now, folks. Esdras is going to ask the angel to show him the interpretation of the dream because he's still not quite sure what he's seeing. So let's go back now. Read verse 14.
2nd chapter 13 of verse 14. Thou hast showed thy servant these wonders from the beginning, and hast counted me worthy that thou shouldest receive my prayer.
Read verse 15.
Show me now yet the interpretation of this dream.
Now Ezra asked the angel, he said, show me this interpretation. I see this vision, but I'm still not quite sure what's going on. Okay, read verse 16.
For as I conceive in my understanding, woe unto them that shall be left in those days.
I'm sorry. What says, woe unto them that shall be left in those days. Continue.
And much more woe unto them that are not left behind.
Now we're gonna read it slow. One more time. We're gonna read it real slow. Read verse 16 real slow.
For as I conceive in mine understanding, woe unto them that shall be left in those days.
Stop right there. Woe unto them that should be left behind in those days. Now, it said the 10 tribes went to a further country, right, Qanath?
Right, verse 48, yep.
Now, we're going to see what direction they went in. Let's go now. Let's go to verse 47, second Esdras.
The highest shall stay the spring of the stream again, and they may go through, therefore soeth thou the multitude with peace.
Right now, read verse 48. Now we're about to see what direction they went into because we just read verse 16, right? Ezra says, for as I can see in my understanding, basically Ezra is saying this here, for what I can get out of this vision, for what I can get from this vision, woe unto them that shall be left in those days. Now we're about to see what direction they went into. Read verse 48.
But those that be left behind of thy people are they that are found within my borders.
What is God? Where is God's border?
Jerusalem.
Showing you what direction they went. The 10 tribes. Now let's go back to verse 16. Read, I read it one more time. For as I can see in my understanding, woe unto them that shall be left behind in those days, right? Then it says, and much more woe. Why it says much more woe unto them that are not left behind? Because when the 10 tribes migrated, many of them stayed behind in that region of Jerusalem. But God said, much more woe unto them that are not left behind, that went further into Africa. Let's prove it. Let's go to the book of Judith. This is the step right here. Let's go to the book of Judith.
Judith?
Yeah, Judith, yep. We're going to the book of Judith, and we're going to go to, let me get there. We're going to chapter 4.
What you want, Judith? What?
We're going to book of Judith, chapter 4. So we just read, it says, woe unto them that be left behind, right? In Jerusalem, and much more woe unto them that are not left behind, right? That's what we just read. Now, this is the book of Judith, folks. Write these verses down. The book of Judith, chapter 4. Start at verse 1.
Judith, chapter 4, verse 1. Now the children of Israel that dwelt in Judea heard all that Olophanes, the chief captain of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Syrians, had done to the nations, and after what manner he had spoiled all their temples and brought them to naught. Therefore they were exceedingly afraid of him and were troubled for Jerusalem.
Stop right there. So it says that It says that remember, Holofernes is the guy who Judas cut his head off, right? This is the same guy that he was a captain of Nebuchadnezzar, right? So
Right.
it says that one more time, and now the children of Israel that dwelt in Judea, they heard that Holofernes, the chief captain of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, because Nebuchadnezzar was called king of the Assyrians and king of Babylon.
Yep.
He says, it says right here, and done to the nation. So the Israelites heard what he done. Then it says, and after what manner he has spoiled all their temples and brought them to naught. Read verse 2 one more time.
Therefore they were exceedingly afraid of him and were troubled for Jerusalem.
It said that they were afraid of him. They were afraid and they was troubled for Jerusalem. Continue.
And for the temple of the Lord their God.
Now here's the kicker right here, verse 3 that we just read. It says, woe to them that shall be left in those days, right, Qanath?
Yep.
And much more woe unto them that went further into Africa, and soon you're going to see why it says much more woe. Now read verse 3, but read it slow.
For they were newly returned from the captivity.
Stop right there. It said that they were newly returned from what?
From the captivity.
Now keep in mind, this is during the Babylonian captivity. Right? This is when Nebuchadnezzar first became king of Assyria.
Mm-hmm.
It said that they were newly returned from the captivity. These are the Jews that escaped during the Assyrian civil war. These are the Jews that returned, that's mentioned in 2nd Esdras. Read it one more time.
Did you hear that?
For they were newly returned from the captivity, and all the people of Judea were lately gathered together, and the vessels in the altar in the house were sanctified after their.
You see that? They said they was newly returned from the captivity. Now let's go to stay in the book of Judith, chapter the same chapter 5. Let's go to chapter 5. Judith chapter 5. When you get to chapter 5, we're going to read verses 18 and 19.
Judith chapter 5.
In fact, before you start reading, right? We're not going to read everything. What's going on here? Holofernes, right? Holofernes is asking. He's asking one of the men of the I think it was the Amorites, Ammon, one of the men of Ammon. He's asking him and saying, give me information about these people. He wants to know about the nation of Israel, right? In fact, I'll start reading verse 7. Read verse 7.
Judith chapter 5 and verse 7.
And my bad, no, verse 6. I'm sorry, verse 6. Mm-hmm.
This people are descended of the Chaldeans.
See, Ammon told this captain, Holofernes, this people is descendants of the Chaldeans. Where Abraham came from. Abraham is descendant of the Chaldeans. Continue.
And they sojourned heretofore in Mesopotamia, right, because they would not follow the gods of their fathers, which were in the land of Chaldea. Or they left the way of their ancestors and worshiped the God of heaven, the God whom they knew. So they cast them out from the face of their gods, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days.
Okay, you can stop right there. You can stop. But basically, he continues to give him the history of the Jews, and them coming out of Egypt, how they settled in Canaan, all the wars they went through, etc. Right? And then he tells them that every time they disobeyed God, God had the surrounding nations conquer them. Right? So let's read verse 18.
But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles, very sore, and were led captives into a land that was not theirs, and the temple of their God were cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies.
Stop. So he telling this captain Ammon, right? He said that they were taken into captivity. Now, mind you, This is during the Babylonian, or during the beginning of the Babylonian Empire. He said they was taken to captivity, right? Read verse 19.
But now are they returned to their God. But now are they returned to their God.
Continue.
And are come up from the places where they were scattered. And have possessed Jerusalem, where the sanctuary is. Possess Jerusalem, where the sanctuary is. And are seated in the hill country, where it was desolate.
You see that? It said they had come up from the place where they were scattered. And it said they were where? And they had possessed who? Jerusalem.
But Jerusalem.
They had come up from the place they were scattered. When you go back, let's go back to Judas chapter 4 one more time. One more time, go back to Judas chapter 4 and read verse 2 and 3 one more time. Then we're going back to 2nd Esdras.
Judah chapter 4 verse 2. Therefore they were exceedingly afraid of him, and were troubled for Jerusalem and for the temple of the Lord their God. For they were newly returned from the captivity, and all the people of Judea were lately gathered, and the vessels and the altar and the house were sanctified after the profanation.
Right. There you go, right there. They was newly returned from the captivity. Now let's go back in 2nd Esdras.
So hold on, you mean to tell me they came back from America after they got off the ships? They came back over here,
right?
Jerusalem.
Right, exactly. Come on, man. They need to stop it, man. I mean, the game is over already anyway.
Now, Yehuda, you also know, like we read whatever other night, in the book of Jeremiah, 25th chapter, is talking about Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon and all the nations that he had in captivity as servants unto him.
Yep, that's right. And Edom was one of those nations.
And Edom was one of them.
Yep.
So Edom was enslaved.
You see that?
Yeah.
So when you go to 2nd Esdras verse 16, it says one more time, and it says, woe unto those that are left behind in those days. Now you know they was left in Jerusalem, and we just showed you in the book of Judith that they returned from the captivity.
Yep.
Because you remember, the Assyrians didn't let them go. This is during the Babylonian Empire, right? When the Nebuchadnezzar Empire first sprung up. So those Jews that just returned from the captivity, those were the 10 tribes, because it wasn't until Cyrus, the king of Persia, when God allowed them to leave. I mean, they gave the decree to king of Persia. So when it says when they came, they was newly returned from the captivity, it's talking about those Jews within the 10 tribes. Right? So now, so it says one more time, verse 16, right? Woe unto them that are left behind, and much more woe unto them that are not left behind in those days. Read verse 18.
Verse 18 from 2nd Esdras.
Yes.
Now understand I the things that are laid upon in the latter days, which shall happen unto them, and to those that are left behind.
You see? And to those that are left behind. Now you just read in the book of Judith that the people they was afraid, right? When they heard the captain of Nebuchadnezzar coming, right? They was afraid.
Yep.
And they was in Jerusalem. That's why it says much more woe unto them that are left behind in those days. Let's read verse 19.
Therefore are they come into great perils and many necessities, like as these dreams declare.
Now when you read this here, in verse 19, when it says they came into great perils, right? That's talking about they was going through trials and tribulation. That's what it's speaking about. They was going through a lot of trouble. It was like, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't even the Jews that migrated. They did not have an easy migration. Read verse 20.
Verse 20. Yet it is easier for him that is in danger to come out into these things than to pass away as a cloud out of the world, and not to see the things that happen in the last days.
Right.
He answered unto me and said, the interpretation of the vision shall I show thee, and I will open unto thee the thing that thou hast required. Verse 22. Whereas thou hast spoken of them that are left behind. This is the interpretation.
All right, stop right there. So the angel now is telling Esdras, he says, whereas thou hast spoken of them that are left behind. So when you go back again to verse 16, it says, woe unto them that shall be left behind. Meaning in Jerusalem. Let's talk about in Jerusalem, as I just showed you. In the book of Judith, it said they was newly returned from the captivity. Read verse 23.
And he shall endure the peril in that time.
Meaning this is, he shall endure the tribulation in that time. That's what it's talking about. He shall endure the peril in that time. He's going to overcome. Go ahead.
He that shall endure the peril in that time hath kept himself, that they be fallen into danger, as such as have works and faith towards the Almighty.
You see that? Stop right there. So it says that and he shall endure the peril in that time and has kept himself, right? And they that be fallen into danger are such as have works and faith towards the Almighty, because they cried upon the Almighty. And right, in fact, let's go to Judas. Go back to Judas 4 and read verse 9.
All right, let me get it.
They cried out to God, even though they was going through things. They cried out to the Most High.
Judah chapter 4, verse 9. Then every man of Israel cried to God with great fervency and with great vehemency. Did they humble their souls.
You see that? Basically, when they heard that the captain Holofernes came down from Babylon, they cried out to the Most High. And the word fervency, it means intense. It was an intense cry. It was a passionate cry. That's what it means. Let's go back to 2 Ezra. Read verse 24.
Verse 24. Know this therefore, that they which be left behind are more blessed than they that be dead.
You see that? Because those that be left behind, they came out of the trials and tribulations. But those, it says that they are more blessed than those that are dead, because many of the Jews that migrated into Africa, they suffered and they went through a lot of things, right? And many of them died along the way. It was not an easy migration. These Negroes act like they act like the 10 tribes migrated and had an easy migration.
And had the money and to get the shit.
Where the food come from? Where all the other stuff? What account of that? I mean,
we already proved that they went back to Jerusalem.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So basically, like I said, when they migrated, they did not have an easy migration. That's why it says here in verse 24, it says, and more blessed than those that were left behind in Jerusalem. It said that they were more blessed than they that are dead, because many died along the way. Read verse 25.
Verse 25. This is the meaning of the vision, whereas thou sawest a man coming up from the midst of the sea. Boom. Verse 26.
Oh, stop. So now he's explaining to him the vision. Read verse 2 one more time. Verse 2.
And lo, there arose a wind from the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof.
Now, what did I say that the sea represented?
The sea people, represented the people.
And the wind represents who?
Christ.
The angel is about to explain that now. Read verse 25 one more time.
This is the meaning of the vision, whereas thou sawest a man coming up from the midst of the sea. Verse 26. The same is he whom God the highest have kept a great season, which by his own self shall deliver his creature, and he shall order them that are left behind.
Let's stop there. Let's break this verse. Let's break this down right here. It says that the same is he whom God the highest has kept for a great season. Because when you go to the scripture, it said that Christ's name was a secret. It was a secret. His name was a secret even among the prophets, many of the angels, I mean the prophets didn't even know, because when you read the Qanath, Christ is all throughout the volume of the book. That's why it says he was kept a great season, right? Then it says, which by his own self he shall deliver his creature, meaning his people. And then it says, and who shall order them that are who? That are what? That are left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Now it said those that are left behind, do me a favor, read verse 38 and 39.
Verse 38 and 39.
Yeah.
And shall lay before them their evil thoughts and torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame, and he shall destroy them without labor by the law which is like unto them, unto fire.
Read verse 40. Verse 40.
Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanasar the king of Assyria led away captive. Excuse me. And he carried them over the waters.
Right.
And so came they into another land.
Now go back to verse 26.
You said 13 what?
26. Go back to verse
26. The same is he whom God the highest have kept in great season,
right,
which by his own self shall deliver his creature, and he shall order them that are left behind.
Now you know. Those that were left behind were the Jews within the 10 tribes.
Mm-hmm. Here we go.
Over the centuries, scattered reports told of Jewish tribes living beyond the mythical Sambatyon River, of a remote African land inhabited by the 10 lost tribes of Israel.